What is up? It's Wednesday night. It's Fourth and Frames, and this is not Jorge Edwards. It's Nate Markham, and with me, of course, on I say it's Wednesday. It is Wednesday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Days all screwed up still.
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure we're on the same page with everything. But with me, of course, Brian and Tyler. Guys, how we doing?
Not bad. Hanging in. Yeah, midweek, starting to look forward to week 13. Playoffs are going to start in a couple weeks. Things are getting interesting.
Yeah, I'm ready for the playoffs to start. Start stashing some backup running backs and defenses if you got them.
You mean start starting some backup running backs, because that's about where we're at. I was trying to think of any clever intro song that had backup, and all I could think of was "Back That Ass Up," and I don't think Jorge would like me to play that as our intro. But he's not here, so we can do whatever we want. But again, filling in for Jorge. This is the Fourth and Frames podcast for fantasyandframes.com. Every Wednesday, what we'll do is we'll go around, check out some of the news, notes, what's happening, and then we will get into our flex offs, talk about some prime spots and some bust spots. And let me ask you guys a quick question. As far as your playoffs, everybody's doing the same thing, correct? Everybody's going in with week 17 as being the championship. Nothing unique, right? Neither one of you two. I don't think we've talked about this.
That's, for me, every league that I'm in, we're doing a week 17 championship.
Yeah, we all pushed it back to 15 to 17 to accommodate the 18-week season.
I would assume so, but there's got to be somebody out there. Have you guys ever played in a week? Well, I guess week 17 now would be week 18 championship league.
I think some of the ESPN leagues default, the free leagues used to do that, which used to annoy me.
Shocker. Tyler?
A long time ago when I was a noob.
Before the experts that we are now.
Yes.
But it's true. That is, there's nothing worse. I'm sorry. If you're going in and you're going to play, you're going to get to week 17 or now week 18, and half of your starters are out, and you're finding that you have to put in, well, we're getting good practice at that this week, because it sure feels like we're starting a bunch of backups and everything else. And I guess we'll go around and try to help some of these people out. Quarterback's probably one that's not as affected. If anything, it might be a little give and take. Did you guys hear Aaron Rodgers actually say that he was contemplating surgery? This was on Monday. So on Monday, he said, if I have surgery, I feel that I could still play on Sunday, even if I have surgery on, say, Tuesday or Wednesday. What's the chance that if he actually had surgery that he was really going to play? Tyler?
You never know with Rodgers. Everything he does is calculated.
True.
So, they could be setting him up to say, hey, I could have played, but they wouldn't let me. They want to start Jordan Love.
That's pretty clever. I didn't really give it too much thought into that aspect, but that makes, unfortunately, way too much sense. If you had Aaron Rodgers and he had surgery on Tuesday and they still said he was a go, would you start him over, say, someone like over Taysom Hill?
That's a really good question. I mean, Rodgers on 1 foot, 9 toes is, better than Jordan Love for sure. And maybe even Taysom Hill, although the Rams have a good pass defense. Oh, they're not playing them this week. Anyway, I'd probably have to go Rodgers. I just have a thing. I don't really like Taysom Hill. I know his quarterback overall stats when he was a starter are good, but I'm sorry. Long story short, I would go Rodgers.
Yeah, fair enough. And speaking of Taysom Hill, as we said, it's announced that he's going to be the starter. I don't know, Brian. I know your take. Mine is kind of on Taysom Hill. Tyler, are you a truther with Taysom Hill? Throw him in, hoping he's going to just get you the 2 rushing touchdowns and nothing in between the red zones.
Truther is a strong word. Would I play Taysom Hill? Yes, I would. Yeah. Because 1, I believe in Sean Payton, and 2, rushing upside. I mean, right. Kamara might be back. If he's not, Taysom Hill's likely going to be the RB1 and the QB1. You throw in, 175 passing yards, maybe a touchdown, 60 rushing yards, and maybe a touchdown there. You're looking at QB1 numbers.
Yeah, and that was the seal, or that was the, I don't want to call it the floor, but that was kind of the potential for that, especially in Superflex leagues, the intrigue with Taysom. Speaking of those dual, threat quarterback, Jalen Hurts is a little hobbled right now. If he has to sit, Jorge's getting his wish, and it's going to be Gardner Minshew, who most likely would get the start. He took reps in the walkthrough, so I don't know what that means. I would say I'm still banking on Jalen Hurts playing, but I don't know. Should one of you guys lean in the other direction?
No. Someone stepped on his ankle, and he still finished the game. So I think they're just being a little cautious now. It's still early in the week. I think he's going to play.
Daniel Jones is not even anybody that we're really too concerned with as far as starting Mike Glennon to start. If not, they signed Jake Fromm. I think them signing Jake Fromm tells me they're not going to play Daniel Jones. I think that probably drops the other role players for New York. We can talk about some of those guys at wide receiver here in just a little bit, but let's talk about a couple of the running backs. Running back is probably the biggest affected, obviously, this week going forward. This is where if you have depth at running back, you probably have a pretty significant stranglehold over everybody else in the league, considering Zeke is still kind of 50-50. You trust in Zeke over Tony? If you get to choose one, Tyler, Zeke or Tony Pollard this week?
I do think there is some truth to them wanting to back off some of the use of Zeke heading into the playoffs. Zeke is Jerry's guy. He loves Ezekiel Elliott, and he has a lot of say with what goes on that field. Yeah. And, if he wants to save him for the playoffs and he believes that that's the right thing to do, I think they're going to run the heck out of Tony Pollard.
Yeah. New Orleans isn't exactly the best team to try to run all over, but I think you're right. But give Tony Pollard a little bit more play. Their offense should be back and healthy. Their defense is getting some pieces back. This isn't the IDP show, but between DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons and the rest of that defense, I think they can keep the ball out of Taysom Hill's out of the end zone, and maybe just lean a little bit on Pollard there. The biggest news, if you ask me, is the loss of Deandre Swift. He's going to miss a few weeks now. Obviously, we'll talk about Jamal Williams in one of our patented flex offs. Jorge, we still don't have a soundbite for that, so we will do the sound effects. It's only week 13. No better late than never, as they say. So we'll have that by week 17. We'll have it just in time for the week 18 championships for the 11 people that are listening for that. And maybe I'm not right. Maybe the news of Dalvin Cook being out for a few weeks now might be bigger news, but I think Dalvin should. I'll put this to you guys. Coming back stronger for the playoffs, would you rather have Dalvin Cook or DeAndre Swift if both came back at the same time?
I think that would be schedule dependent. I'm a Swifter, but I'd have to look at the matchups.
And I guess so. Tyler, let me ask you I guess the more prudent question here is, do you think that Detroit has a reason to bring DeAndre Swift back at all?
No.
Okay. And that's kind of what I'm thinking. Brian, I know we want to see DeAndre Swift play, but why? Why do that to your franchise? They're going to be, I hope they're not 0-14 or 0-15-1 when he comes back, but I don't think it's worth it. Dalvin Cook, on the other hand, torn labrum, rotator cuff, shoulder separation, a bunch of, nasty sounding words. But if they're in a position, they might actually try to get him back on the field.
I don't know if I buy a lot of that. The initial report on that was torn labrum, might miss 2 weeks. I was like, I'm calling BS on that. I think it's going to be longer than 2 weeks. Maybe they force him back by like week 17 or 18. Yeah. But if he's coming back in 3 weeks, I'll be stunned.
Wasn't he already playing with one torn labrum though before that happened? Or did I misread a Schefter tweet? Maybe, I don't know. I thought he already had a shoulder injury on the other side that he was like playing through.
I'm not certain. It wouldn't shock me. Dalvin Cook has not exactly been the beacon of health. I think we all know that. But it's here. Alexander Madison's doing better than I thought he ever would. Honestly, I didn't have much faith in him taking that one RB1 role if something happened to Cook, and it looks like I've been proven wrong. So hopefully I do have Madison in a few, and so hopefully I can ride him to a couple, to some playoffs.
And he's done well in his previous matchups against Detroit, so a solid play this week for sure.
Oh yeah, smash play. Maybe he's someone's prime matchup this week. I don't know. I didn't ask that question. We'll get to there. Darrell Henderson has left a little bit quad strain, supposed to play this week. Alvin Kamara, as we talked about, is questionable, trending towards playing again. Teddy Ricketson's favorite person, J.D. McKissic, appears to be out for a little bit of time. Hopefully he comes back. Getting carted off the field was a little scary, but he didn't practice, but they didn't put him on IR, so we'll just kind of wait and see. And then Adrian Peterson, Tyler, going to Seattle. You ready? You ready for the all-day chance in Seattle by the 12th man?
I'm going to go ahead and leave Adrian Peterson on my waiver wire where he belongs. So it's a little disappointing. I saw DJ Dallas actually jumped up to a 60% snap share last week because Alex Collins was Alex Collinsing all over the field.
It's garbage.
And he is likely going to lose a lot of those opportunities he was going to get.
Yeah, I like Dallas. That's too bad.
Yeah, I do too. Somewhere, someone still has Adrian Peterson on their bench because they thought he was going to be something relevant in Tennessee. Had people listen to, I guess, the majority of this show, from what I can gather, reading from all of our tweets and comments and conversations, is that was not something that was going to be in play anyway. But I digress. Let's talk about some positives. Corey Davis is out. That's positive for most. I'm just kidding, Brian. I know that you don't really. It's not as much fun to talk trash about the Jets when you're like, I really don't care.
Yeah, I'm kind of lukewarm Jets fan. It's it's leftover disease from my childhood that just kind of like go with,
That's fair, but Keelan Cole's out. Maybe Denzel Mims week this week might be a little crazy. Maybe it's Jamison Crowder. I know we're starting from the bottom and we're working way to the crescendo of the fact that CeeDee Lamb got into full practice and clear concussion, should be good to go. Interesting thing I read on Will Fuller. Not that, I'm going up and down, as you can imagine. Will Fuller's not exactly the lead in, but they said that they described his finger fracture as being shattered. So if you're sitting around waiting for Will Fuller to return, I'd probably say you can dump him and not pay attention, which just means he'll come back next week, put up about 8 for 212 and 2 touchdowns. You heard it here first. DeAndre Hopkins should return, should be good to go. Not sure. You think he jumps right back into that like frustration role for all of us, or does he actually turn into that wide receiver one that we drafted, Tyler?
I'd say he's likely going to jump back into that frustration role. You're getting Kyler back. I think he's going to target the heck out of Christian Kirk. I think he's going to target AJ Green. He's going to hit Zach Ertz. And Colt McCoy's been loving Zach Ertz. Let's hope Kyler Murray loves him as well. D-Hop will probably find his way into the end zone at some point.
Yeah, I was going to say, because of his touchdown, I guess, percentage, touchdown efficiency, whatever, I think his fantasy points per game is really not bad when it comes to overall wide receiver ranking. So
right,
no,
you're right. It has been. I think we tell everybody to do, and I think we do the exact same thing, is don't just look at. You try to read a little bit deeper into it and see what's going on. But you're right. Touchdown dependency is never a good thing. But I wouldn't put that large of a moniker on Hopkins completely, just because he's an alpha and we know that he's capable. And I'm not too concerned with AJ Green, and Rondale Moore. Would be nice to see him get a little bit more usage, but I think that's going to be the trade-off. I think he'll revert back to them not getting him enough touches, which he needs and which I think fantasy managers want. Kind of similar to like Kadarius Toney, didn't practice today, not looking good for him. Sterling Sharp should probably be coming back. Sterling Sharp, someone that you guys are focused on picking up, considering he was such a target monster prior to the injury.
Sterling Sharp is pretty old, so I'm probably not going to go with him. But
Sterling, yes. Well, I like Sterling Sharp. I like Shannon Sharp, Sterling Sharp, and Packers. Yes, that Sterling Shepard.
Yes,
I guess is probably who you were referring to.
I am quite the fanboy for Sterling Shepard. I think he's been one of the most productive fantasy players when he's on the field in the past 3 years. He's never going to give you a real ceiling game, but he's going to get his catches, he's going to get his yards, and he's probably going to get you 10 to 12 points every week. So I would be happy to flex him if he's healthy.
Well, I like Sterling Sharp too. So if you're listening, Sterling Sharp, I think you were one of the best wide receivers, unfortunately, that plagued by injuries and a career cut too short. I was going to say RIP, but I think he's still alive, so that's probably not the right term to use.
I kind of don't like when people do that, like RIP, just when somebody gets injured and stuff. It's a little, I don't know. Maybe I'm just too sensitive about it. It's a little morbid for me.
It's very much so, which is why I will not say that about a player, but I will say that about his season. Is Antonio Brown's season I'm done with. Right now, Bruce Arians says he's doubtful for maybe the next couple weeks. I don't want to play this song and dance anymore. Anybody else holding out hope for Antonio Brown?
And even if he did play, I mean, the Bucs can win so many different ways, and there's different weapons, and Brady hasn't been pushing the ball downfield as much recently. So, I mean, I'm not really concerned about him.
No,
and I would play him if he gets on the field. I'd play him.
Okay,
Brady loves him.
He did. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt. But that if is not going to happen. It doesn't sound like, and so we can avoid Cooper Kupp, Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb both. As I said, CeeDee cleared concussion, should be got a full practice in, ready to go. Amari Cooper's off of IR. Looks like all systems go for Dallas. I think they're in line for a pretty strong push for the next going into the playoffs as well. And then tight end to round it out, Dan Arnold was placed on the IR today. Pat Freiermuth in concussion protocol. Darren Waller has a strained IT band right now that's not sounding good. I will tell you right now, I don't know if a prime matchup or one of your spots is Fabian Moreau, but I think that he filled in admirably. Last time Darren Waller missed time, and I wouldn't have a problem throwing him in a not super deep league, but any league that you need tight end usage whatsoever, especially if you're a Darren Waller manager.
Yeah, you're 2 for 2 with names. His name's Foster Moreau.
Yep, thank you. I am very good. Who's Fabian Moreau?
I have no idea. I was like,
he is a Fabian Moreau, huh?
He plays football. I Googled him when you said it. I was like, who the hell is that? He is a cornerback for the Atlanta Falcons.
Oh, that's why. Yeah. See, the IDP side of me gets the best of me sometimes, and I switch back and forth. It's for the IDP listeners that only like to hear me talk about that, so they stick around and they're like, he dropped that for me. That was kind of like the wink or the tug on the ear for whoever the actress was that used to do that.
Carol Burnett.
Carol Burnett. Thank you. Exactly.
Cool.
Yep. That's I'll finish on a high note. Harrison Bryant has a high ankle sprain, so suck on it, Tyler. You're gonna have one less tight end in Cleveland. It's gonna
David Njoku season.
It was. What did he have last week? Like 6 targets?
I couldn't finish watching the game, so
it's a pretty ugly game.
Well, I'm gonna keep the rest of this simple by using only very small, short, condensed words and names that I know. Tyler, Brian. What we'll do, talk about a couple prime matchups, see who's in line this week to have, what we would consider prime matchups. And let's start with you, Brian. Give me a quarterback and then a tight end if you want to just round out and do both for a prime matchup, and then follow that right up with your bust. Well, instead of waiting to the end to do the bust, we'll do them early and get them both in and out.
Okay, I'm going to elect to do QB now and tight end later, so I don't talk too much.
That's fair.
Continuously. I think for prime matchups for quarterback, I think what jumps off the page at you is Brady at Atlanta, ranked 31st against quarterbacks. But, like I said, they can win with Leonard Fournette and, that sort of thing. So, I mean, it's going to be a good matchup. You're probably playing him in redraft if you have him. Mm-hmm. They are ranked 28th in coverage. I think PFF or actually, no, that's the Washington football team, which I'm about to talk about because the two that I really want to highlight, and I'll shut up in a second, are both facing each other. Carr versus Washington, who's ranked 32nd against quarterbacks. Their defense has been back on the upswing, but I think they're still susceptible. I don't love their secondary. They're ranked 28th in coverage. So if the Raiders can block the 5th ranked pass rush, I think Carr can have a good day even without Waller. You've got Djax developing as a deep threat. You've got Hunter Renfrow. You've got Foster Moreau. I think he'll be fine. And then Heineke on the other side of the ball at Las Vegas, they're ranked 27th against quarterbacks. They're 20th in coverage by PFF. They again have a pretty good pass rush, but if you can keep Heineke upright, he's shown that he can make some good throws.
Yeah. Who's the
bust?
Yeah.
The bust quarterback, and I don't like saying this because I have so many shares of him, especially in Dynasty, but it's Joe Burrow versus the Chargers, who are ranked 6th, versus the quarterbacks, even after giving up that almost comeback to Pittsburgh. They're ranked 7th in coverage, PFF. They're ranked 12th in pass rush, PFF. And Cincinnati's been running the ball more and feeding Joe Mixon. Joey B said we're trying to establish the run, and they've been doing that. Chargers are not good against the run. So I think as long as they can feed Joe Mixon, I don't think, Joe Burrow is going to do much more than the 190 yards that he did last week.
Yeah, I don't want to say disappointed with Burrow, but I am made a trade for him in a league that was, moving pieces. And unfortunately it's not been, it hasn't been sexy points. You know what I mean? Sometimes that has no bearing, but it does. Tyler, how about a running back?
All right. Let me ask Brian a question first. Joe Burrow or Taysom Hill?
Oh, Jesus.
Man.
I think I still have to go with yeah, I think I might. I just trust Burrow a little bit more than I do Taysom Hill. Although I will admit, I kind of have an anti-Taysom Hill bias. I don't know why. For what it's worth, Fantasy Pros ECR has Burrow at 11 and Hill at 14.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to see if I could get him to say Taysom Hill.
We could find some quarterbacks that eventually say Taysom Hill over, I'm guessing.
Mike Glennon.
There you go.
All right, so prime matchup. I went a little deeper this week. Alexander Madison is an easy smash, but I reached a little bit and I went Boston Scott. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't taste good coming out of my mouth, but Jordan Howard's gone. Boston Scott outsnapped a healthy Miles Sanders last week, outsnapped and outtouched. The Eagles are a very strange running back experiment, but I think we need to get rid of some of our expectations for Miles Sanders. Everyone had these high hopes for him. He was drafted in the 2nd round out of Penn State, going to the Eagles, and he was going to be the next big thing. And, he's had some games where he's looked really good, but that coaching staff, they don't like playing him that much. And they apparently love playing Boston Scott. They gave him 16 carries last week. And on top of all that, he got the goal line carries.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to lower expectations for Miles Sanders. I'm going to put him on NBA Jam rules until I can see him actually do it consistently again. I'm not messing with that. And, the Jets.
Can I ask what NBA Jam rule? I remember playing that game when I was younger, but what do you mean by that? I'm sorry.
So if you made 3 shots in a row on NBA Jam, you were on fire and you essentially couldn't miss.
Right.
So I just want to see him do it consistently, maybe 3 games in a row, and he can have it.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No. What's crazy, though, is as much as I 100% agree with you, it's like I think I agree with you so much because I don't trust any of the coaching staff in Philly to do the right thing. I mean, they did the right thing in taking the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands and allowing the running game to prosper and then putting less pressure on him. But isn't Miles Sanders averaging 5.5 yards per attempt?
Yeah, good.
I'm just like, what are they missing, or what do they see? Something, is it practice that they're not? I just don't know. It's the one aspect of, analytics and everything else that we can look at, and everything points to him being successful. And then you look at touches and you go, well, that didn't make sense. So, whatever. How about your bust?
My bust, I'm going to go, and this is entirely situational. I'm going to go Darrell Henderson versus the Jags. The Rams are playing the lowly Jaguars. The Jaguars are terrible. They're rough to watch. They're not well coached on either side of the ball. But Darrell Henderson, he's been banged up all year. He's been playing. He's only missed one game. He's done a good job of staying on the field. But when you're playing the Jags and you have a quad strain and you are banged up and you're trying to make a playoff push, I don't see any reason why the Rams wouldn't give a little more work to Sony Michel this week and kind of let him carry the load and let Darrell Henderson, have a maintenance week, we'll call it, and just get a little bit of work and not really blow the doors off like you'd expect him to. I mean, you'd want Henderson to have 20 carries and 5 targets and at least 1 touchdown. I just don't think that's going to happen this week. Just situationally, I don't think it's a good plan for the Rams. So I'm going to take him as my bust.
No, that's fair. I mean, a quad injury, no matter what, especially if he's, in limited practices and the expectation is to play, I think that we've talked about that all year, that the predetermined, I don't want to risk it. Now, chances are you're not going to have a better option than with the amount of injuries that have happened and everything else. You're probably stuck playing them, but it's good enough if you have the depth and the riches, can dive into your gold nugget pool and come out. Well, who's that? Scrooge McDuck? I got that name right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Didn't even Google it. Just off the top of the old dome knowledge. My prime matchup, I feel like I should have a Brandon Ayuk jersey at this point because I have been on Brandon Ayuk for the last about past month now, it feels like. And coincidentally, since that time, he has been the wide receiver 14. He gets a Seattle team that I have no clue what they're doing. I really don't. I mean, defensively, offensively, they used to be this kind of the gold standard for ran football teams, properly ran on both sides of the ball, and now they're a mess. But no Deebo Samuel. The offense has looked, last week wasn't probably the best jumping off point, but prior to that, they have been great. I mean, you go back for the past month, and Ayuk's had at least a touchdown or 90 yards in 3 of the last 4 games. In that same span, Deebo was the wide receiver too. So there's obviously volume to be able to maintain for 2 separate receivers. I don't expect Deebo's targets and his production to jump over to Brandon Ayuk. That's not what I'm saying, because I think people, obviously the rushing attempts and everything else, but to say that he shouldn't see an uptick in some targets, I think is a little bit crazy. But, Seattle, this is the crazy part. Seattle has to get the offense back on track, right? I mean, it's almost like we're just waiting for the shoe to drop and for the offense to get back to where they were at. And I think that can happen this week against San Francisco. No Fred Warner, so the defense should be a little more susceptible to Seattle trying to make this an offensive game, maybe get into a little bit of a shootout. If that's the case, I think Ayuk can take total advantage. Like I said, he's been the wide receiver 14 over the last month, so he's capable already. But Seattle allows 69% catch rate over the past 4 weeks. They haven't allowed a touchdown yet, though. So when you look at their overall rankings, you're like, man, Seattle's been excellent against wide receivers over the last month. Keep in mind, they're still allowing a ton of targets, ton of receptions, just not the touchdowns. 1 touchdown over that span jumps them, not 8 or 9 spots. And I think that's where Ayuk, who in that same span has the 6th best reception percentage in all of the NFL. So you have this defense that's allowing targets, allowing catches, receiver who's obviously making the most of what he's got. Jimmy G looks better from the shotgun more so than play action. I like Ayuk in this matchup. And conversely, as far as a bust, man, it hurts me to say this because I just worry, and like I just said about Seattle, and the offense has to pick it up. I mean, can we trust DK Metcalf? I mean, it's hard to do so right now. I mean, it's just, you look at last week's game, and Brian Greasy was even pointing it out, and he's like, DK's in another one-on-one. Here's a prime opportunity, and he doesn't even get a look, not even a glance. Like, Russell's not going through his progressions, and then when he does, his key 1, 2, 3 looks doesn't involve DK Metcalf, which is crazy. There's no way your alpha receiver is not getting even a look, but He hasn't had a touchdown since week 8. He hasn't eclipsed 100 yards since week 3. He's had some decent weeks altogether, but not the DK Metcalf that we're expecting. And I just worry. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. And I hope that for many sakes, but I think at this point we just have to kind of temper our expectations. We're probably you're probably not capable of not starting him, but you know what I mean? I don't know if you want to start him. I wouldn't put a bunch of money on him if you were banking on prop bets.
Would you start Hunter Renfrow straight up over DK Metcalf?
I don't think I could. I think that FOMO type play comes into effect, and I think I would rather be burnt with DK in my lineup than be burnt with DK on my bench. And I know that's terrible analysis and that's terrible managerial skills, but that's where you're at. It's a game.
Yeah.
You know. How about that tight end, since we'll sandwich your 2 awesome takes into one there, Brian?
I don't know about that. So real quick, while we're on the topic of the Seahawks, I saw people tweeting the other night that Russ is washed. Is he washed, or is it the finger plus bad coaching, bad offense, and he could bounce back?
Tyler?
I think he can still bounce back. I mean, it's Russ. He's not that old. Was he 31?
Yeah, probably.
Fact check that. He has great receivers around him. Not much of a running game, unfortunately, with Chris Carson gone. But I will not be the one to throw dirt onto Russell Wilson's grave. I refuse to do it.
No, 33, by the way. So. Wow. I mean, not that changes. It's not like, honestly, if he was 31 versus 33, that I'm like, nope, completely disagree. He's washed. I will say that I worry more. Like, I kind of had Russ in that firmly entrenched in that second tier of quarterbacks overall, and it was going to be hard to shake him out of that tree. And now it's like I start to see the cracks in the armor just a little bit from like last year's up and down. But again, I think a lot of that comes back to play calling. I think that they try to put a square peg into a round hole sometimes, and they want to run the ball. And I don't think there's any cohesion between the offensive coordinator, which is now, was the passing game coordinator for LA, and Pete Carroll wants control. It's just kind of a mess. It really is, unfortunately, or fortunately, because I don't really care for Seattle that much. But whatever.
Okay, since we keep picking on Taysom Hill, Wilson and Hill are back-to-back in Fantasy Pros ECR. Who you starting?
I'm starting Russ.
Ooh, I'm going to be weird, and I'm going to go Taysom Hill.
Okay.
Dang, that should have been a flex off. I should have thought of that. That would have been a good. Oh, wow. Yeah. Maybe we should have these conversations prior to.
Well, I'll go ahead with the tight ends. So, as usual, I have difficulty choosing just one. So I'll try to be brief about each of these. The first one is going to impress Nate, although I will say this. It is not an original bit of research by me. It's a tweet that I saw, and I wish I could credit the person because I forget who tweeted it. But Detroit, despite being middle of the pack against tight ends, plays zone coverage the 12th most out of all the teams in the NFL. And when Minnesota faces zone coverage, they spread the ball out better. RB and tight end targets per route run go up. So I'm looking at Tyler Conklin, who had a pretty quiet week last week, to have a pretty good game against Detroit. If Freiermuth clears protocol and plays, Baltimore is ranked 29th against the tight end. His usage just keeps going up. There's no Ebron. And I didn't know this, had the most tight end targets inside the 10 all year. And finally, to go with my Heineke prime matchup, I like Logan Thomas. The Raiders are 30th against the tight end. He got 6 targets versus Seattle. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't have a pretty good game. FYI, BT Dubs. He has a pretty favorable matchups during the playoff weeks. So if you can still trade and need a tight end, it might be somebody to go after. And for my busts, on the flip side of the Detroit game, I hate saying this because I love them, but Hawkinson versus Minnesota, who is fourth against the tight end. They held, I think it's 5.7 points they're giving up or something like that. They held Kittle to one catch. Hawk's been up and down and disappointing and fairly unreliable this year. So he's a potential bust. And we were just speaking about the coaching and offense woes in Seattle. And I liked Everett for a couple weeks, but he's facing San Francisco, who's sixth against the tight end. Their offense is not looking good. And for what it's worth, Russ said we need to feed DK more. So, we'll see. Potential bust Gerald Everett against San Francisco.
Yeah, and that quote, the squeaky wheel is probably the main reason why I was concerned with DK. But I want to shed light on DK that there is a chance that everybody can be on the bus squad at least have their name mentioned, unfortunately. So that means DK has about that 10 for 180 and 2. So, well, that'd be good for all of us that have them. I guess now would be the good time for the sound drop to move on to the flex offs. Tyler, do you want to do a sound effect? Oh, nice. Good luck following that up. 1 point for Brian for Ramondre Stevenson. So you're already behind the 8 ball a little bit. In this flex off, for anybody listening that has never listened before, this segment of the show, we pit 2 analysts against each other in a flex off of sorts between 2 flex worthy matchups that one might have a decision between. For week 13, the first flex off will be Ramondre Stevenson of the New England Patriots with Brian against Jamal Williams on Detroit, represented by Tyler. I say represented like they're plaintiffs, but I'm the judge in this particular flex off. Even or odd, Brian?
Odd.
It is even. Tyler, you get the floor.
All right. So this one is pretty simple for me. Ramondre Stevenson is RB2 on a team playing one of the better run defenses in the league with the Bills at Buffalo. Fantasy is largely an opportunity over talent game, and Jamal Williams has the opportunity over Ramondre Stevenson. And, I don't want to really scoff at Jamal Williams' talent either. He's a solid player. He was productive in Green Bay. He's been productive in spurts in Detroit, even on a terrible offense. So he's a good player. So what I will say with his matchup, he's playing the Vikings in Detroit. Vikings are giving up the 9th most points to the running back position. And Jamal Williams, with DeAndre Swift being out, is going to easily get an 80% snap share. That is likely going to translate into 20 to 25 touches because they cannot throw the ball to the wide receiver because they don't really have any professional players on the outside. So, the Jamal Williams and TJ Hawkinson are going to be seeing a lot of targets in the middle of the field. So, it might not be the most efficient game, which DeAndre Swift hasn't been very efficient this year because that offense is so bad with Jared Goff and the receivers, but it is going to be an effective game. And it's going to be far more effective than Ramondre Stevenson's 9 carries against the Bills will be.
Good argument. Brian, I know that this was one that was a little bit of a challenge, but I know that you're up for the task because you have Ramondre Stevenson, I'm sure, jerseys lining your home.
Listen, I'm a Ramondre's my guy, so I love him, and I love him more because I think he was too low on people's rookie RB ranks coming into the draft. And, I was like, he could probably be a thing. And now that he's a thing, I kind of, it kind of really turned into I'm like a cheerleader for him. So I will do my best with this. Tyler made a very good case for Jamal Williams. So Ramondre Stevenson against Buffalo. He has increased usage since his spike week. They trust him more. He has, a firm hold on, at least half of the RB touches on a team that likes to run the ball a lot. I think they are going to run a lot to try to keep Buffalo's offense off the field. I think they're generally not asking Mac Jones to do much. And so I think it's going to be a heavy run game. He does have, I believe, 4.6 yards per carry, which is pretty good. 9.8 yards per reception when he, is involved in the receiving game. I think he's been looking better than Harris the last few weeks. And I saw a report out of New England that I think some beat reporters think that, he might soon be overtaking Harrison as far as like being the RB1. I think he's running over people. He just hasn't found the end zone as much as Harris. Mm-hmm. I think that could be, that could change at any time. Why not this week? And compared to Jamal Williams, he's got younger legs that have been used less. And I think that matters a lot in December. And I just don't like Detroit's overall offense, so it's a close one, but give me Ramondre.
It is a close one. And that's actually one of the, the reasons, again, people paying attention. These aren't just random, hey, I'm going to pick Brian's favorite person versus somebody else's least favorite player or their favorite. It's according to ECR through Fantasy Pros. It's the RB24 versus the RB27. So, a feasible scenario. The one thing that I'm going to say about the ECR is I don't believe it's been updated properly yet, simply as a result of DeAndre Swift's activeness. Even though this was this morning, I think that it's, Jamal Williams and just pure percentage. I think that there's a pretty good case to be made that he's going to get 85% of the total team touches at the running back position. And by that alone, I'm a volume type guy, because there's a part of me, and I'm going to say this. I think New England is, I'm not going to say they're overrated, but I'm going to say they're overrated right now. I think that their victories that they've had, if you look back, have not been against very good teams so far. And I'm not taking anything completely away from them. It's not my intent. But I think these next couple of weeks we're going to see what they're made of, because Buffalo's going to be a stout, it's not twice against the Jets. They'll get the Colts coming up. They'll get, like I said, the aforementioned Bills. I think we'll see what New England has in them for the next couple of weeks. And I just don't know how long they'll be able to slow Josh Allen down. So I'm going to give it to Jamal Williams. But Tyler, winning twice in a row is not going to be so easy, because, you get to go against me and CEH, which was just, can't believe. I know exactly. That was, I didn't want to do it because I'm like, crap, now I got to defend something that, close to home. And you get Devante Freeman against Pittsburgh. So do you want to go first or second?
I'll go second this time.
Okay, that's fair. Clearly, I'm, being a Chiefs fan, I watch a lot of the games and see patterns evolving. And one of the patterns that I've noticed is that the Chiefs as a whole are taking a lot of that, what's given to them, and they're running against the shell cover two defenses. Before, we saw Mahomes trying to be Dynamo Superman, running out of the pocket, scrambling on every down, because that's what he was used to doing, is making the the amazing play, and he had to do so. He didn't have an offensive line that he has now, which, when we're talking about an offensive line from a run blocking standpoint, is probably, I'm going to say they're the most improved from last year. The metrics necessarily to compare are hard to do overall, just because of the changing type of defense that's played against them. Excuse me. But if you look at the Broncos, they allow the 10th most yards per carry, which is already a check mark for CEH. CEH's first game back last week clearly was just a slow, walk into the shallow end through the steps. They're not want to give him a full workload, but they gave him 14 touches, which turned into 63 yards and a touchdown. He outsnapped Darrell Williams 14-9. But he wasn't out touched, or total touches as a whole. He saw more times on the field, which is step one for me, because that's what I want to see, is them feel comfortable in letting CEH get onto the field. And then step two is that transition of the offense from this pass heavy attack. And you go back to just like, look at week number 7. I mean, they ran the ball 8 times. And since then, though, they've averaged 25 rushing attempts per game, because they realize the best way to get a team out of cover 2 is run the ball up the middle at them and make them then bring the safeties in. And that's what they're going to do with CEH. I don't see Darrell Williams being involved in this more so than if they were to get behind. Now, show of hands, who thinks that they're going to get behind Denver in this game? Nobody? Nope. Okay. Then I think that we all pretty much know that Mahomes and the offense is starting to click a little bit more. If you look at the last 4 weeks, as I said, now, in addition to Broncos allowing the 10th most yards per carry, they also allow the 10th most receiving yards to running backs. Not saying this is a CEH receiving game, but we all know the capabilities there. This is what the whole reason why CEH was drafted at the end of the first round, and why everybody had him firmly entrenched in the first round of fantasy drafts last year, is because they saw the upside receptions. As I said, with the Chiefs recognizing the shell cover 2, if you look at the last 2 weeks, it appeared they've been tough on opposing running backs, this being the Broncos. But Dallas and the Chargers both in 2 of the last 3 got early turnovers. They had the lead, and game script dictated that. Give me CEH in this matchup behind that stout offensive line from run blocking, and look to them to get ahead early, and CEH to match what is capable of 100 yards on the ground.
All right. I like it. I am going to dispute one thing, though. I believe Darrell Williams outsnapped Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He did not outtouch him, though.
Not in running place.
Oh.
Is that not what I said?
I thought you just said outsnapped him.
I should have said on rushing plays, he outsnapped him.
Okay.
And then overall was outtouched. And see what I didn't even do? I didn't even beat up on Devante Freeman, because I wanted to say he was one last little piece. I know this is probably unfair, but I'm kind of making the rules. I just thought it was interesting. Guess who in the last 3 weeks, dead last in yards per attempt or after contact, and Latavius Murray is the only person that's behind him. So they're 52nd and 53rd overall, which is weird for a team that's so good in rushing attempts. It's not like a knock against them, but it's intriguing that they're doing so well with such bad, after the contact. Sorry.
Yeah, it's Lamar.
Yeah.
All right. So Darrell Williams outsnapped Clyde Edwards-Helaire in passing downs. So what you're saying is that they trust him in pass protection and they trust him in the receiving game. Darrell Williams has one game this season that totals almost every single one of Clyde Edwards-Helaire's targets this season. Helaire has 12 targets on the season. Granted, he missed a lot of games. But Williams has one game with 9 targets and 9 receptions. I think it's fair to say that the Chiefs trust Darrell Williams on passing downs. They trust him to pass block. They trust him to catch the ball. I loved Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a receiving back coming out of LSU as much as anyone, but they are not using him like that. And, I'll believe it when I see it. So, Devante Freeman, he's pretty solidly the RB1 in Baltimore. He lost a little bit of snap percentage last week. Once Latavius Murray came off his injury and had a game to get healthy. But in the past 4 games, Freeman has seen 10 plus carries. In the past 4 games, Freeman has seen 15 opportunities in all but one game, and that was 14 opportunities. He's having a bit of a resurgence. He's 4.3 yards per game, or yards per carry rather. It's not great. It's not great for Baltimore, but for fantasy running backs, 4.3 yards per carry is a nice number to have. And the primary reason behind that efficiency is Lamar Jackson. And, Lamar Jackson is still going to be on the field on Sunday. And at that, a pissed off Lamar Jackson who just got spanked by the Browns defense, regardless of the outcome of that game. 4 interceptions. That's not a pretty game, but they still pulled it out because, I won't get into that. But the Ravens are playing at the Steelers. Steelers, good defense, but maybe a fake good defense against the run. They're giving up the 12th most points to the running back position, and TJ Watt just got added to the COVID list 2 days ago. He still has a chance to play with, the whole that he was vaccinated and all that, but he could very well miss, and the Steelers could be TJ Wattless going against a angry Baltimore offense. And we're going to see Freeman get 50% of those snaps in that backfield and get another 15 plus touches.
As usual, I find these difficult because people make really good arguments. As someone who is, I wouldn't say a CEH truther, but somebody who thinks that he gets way too much hate in fantasy circles, I have been disappointed that they haven't used him getting receiving targets as the rate that I would like to see, So that does concern me. What concerns me about Freeman is really, the Pittsburgh defense is pretty good. I think TJ Watt matters more in the pass rush. Lamar pretty much always sees more carries than either of the running backs, and they're passing more in that team this year. Quick fun trivia. The Denver Broncos won Super Bowl 50 in 2016 after the 2015 season. The last time they beat the Chiefs was before that. The Chiefs has their number. Positive game script. I think CEH usage will increase. I think last week was kind of just getting him, or before the bye or whatever. He was just kind of just breaking him in a little bit. He's had a couple 100-yard games this season. When they use him and use him well, they win. I think, it's just a more efficient, or I should say a more promising offense overall, I think. Again, a close one. I've been surprised by Freeman's ability to produce this year. But I think I'm going to go with CEH on this one.
Yeah. What's weird is that every time that KC plays Denver, I always feel like the game starts off really, really bad for KC. And I don't know if maybe that's just in my mind, but they always seem to be a little more sketchy. And that, Tyler, is how you just win based off of the fact that the team might be in a better situation, despite a better argument, because I feel like I didn't write down my notes as well as I should have composed them. It was a little back and forth, so I do apologize for that. But thank you, Brian, for that. You get the honor of now defending a situation that we talked about. There's a caveat attached to this. Prior to this afternoon, Odell Beckham Jr. had really no injury I'd say announcement, but he did miss practice today. They thought it was more of just a small nagging injury, but there's a chance that he's questionable against the Jags. But in true flex-off fashion, this is a situation that happens. You have to look at, if you have Kyle Pitts, you're probably playing him anyway, but I'm defending Kyle Pitts against OBJ in what many would consider the rising tide for OBJ versus when's it going to correct itself for Kyle Pitts. So, Brian, go ahead and start off with a little Odell Beckham Jr. against the, as Tyler said, horrible Jaguars defense.
Sure. So it's tough for me to say positive things about OBJ. I don't really like him as a person, but that's not what this is about. I think, reports of his demise are very premature. He's still only 29. He can play. He may not be vintage Odell, but he's useful. I think Stafford has been playing hurt, but I think this could be a get-right game for the Rams against a bad team. And they kind of have a bad taste in their mouth because they've been struggling recently. So I think this comes at just the right time. As Nate pointed out, I think either last week or the week before, Jacksonville has improved against the run. They are 18th against wide receivers fantasy points per game, 24th in coverage, PFF, 28th in overall defense, PFF. Odell got 10 targets in his game that he came after the bye week when he had more time to acclimate himself to the offense and build rapport with Stafford. He turned those 10 targets into 5 catches for 81 yards and a touchdown. The Rams have the number 1 defense as far as PFF goes, and they're playing a bad team, so they're going to get the offense on the field more. So I do like OBJ's chances to produce this week. As Nate said, if you have Kyle Pitts, you're probably playing him, but he has not been the same without Calvin Ridley there. He's definitely running routes and, getting some targets, but he's seeing a lot more double coverage and help coverage in these games without Ridley. Ryan's been struggling. CPAT is, really the weapon there. Pitts hasn't done much outside of 2 blow-up games. Tampa Bay is 23rd versus the tight end PPR, but that's still only 7.9 PPR points. So we're not talking about, a lot of points, for Pitts to be able to get. He was actually going to be my bust if it wasn't for this flex off. So I do not like Pitts, and I do like OBJ.
Yeah, and that's, the crux of this is to determine, and a player with the ability and the skill set of Kyle Pitts is what has been holding him back. And if there was a surefire, easy answer, we would all know it because everybody wants to be quick to say they're first and they want to take all the credit for identifying what it is. There's probably a couple factors. Number one is the fact that opposing defenses do know that Kyle Pitts is the one and only target. Cordell Patterson aside, I'm a big Cordell Patterson fan going into the season. I hated the fact that he kept vulturing touches in every position. But you know what? Him being on the field is maybe the most beneficial thing for Kyle Pitts. Him being on the field is less attention going Kyle Pitts' direction. Couple that with the defense that Tampa Bay on the road, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Tampa on the road is a completely different animal, offensively and defensively, than they are at home. Defensively speaking, they're more susceptible to plays over the middle, and they, as a whole, seem to find themselves out of sync a little bit more. Now, this is a defense that is built around Devin White, Devante David, Vita Vea, JPP, Jamel Dean, all of which, by the way, are players that have limited practices and or are battling injury right now. So I went through except for Devante David. I take that back. He's actually full go. But that's a lot of names to have to concern yourself with on the defensive side of the ball when Matt Ryan, who at home has, we know Matt Ryan home versus road splits, probably not as pronounced this year because he's just bad all around. But I can't say that because he's shown signs that he's capable of improving. The problem is it's usually as a result of Cordell Patterson doing something with the ball in his hands, and Matt Ryan doesn't get credit for the pass when it's behind, the old it's a handoff versus a pass, even though he threw the ball, 6-7 yards. But Kyle Pitts, again, Now, you said it exactly right, Brian. He's running routes, the second most in the NFL. He's getting targets. The targets have dropped off a little bit, but who is there on Atlanta that scares any one of us? I'm not going to talk about Cordell Patterson anymore. Is it Russell Gage? Sincerely, I mean, no. Is it Olamide Zaccheaus? No. Is it? I mean, that's the question. Who is it? Who possibly could have it? And I think that we have to just look at how a funneling offense is going to go. And there's a better chance that ball has to funnel through Kyle Pitts, who, if you look at Tampa 2, they're going to play the safeties back. They're going to bring up Antoine Winfield just a little bit. But Devin White being banged up and not having that pass rush on Matt Ryan like they normally would have, I think this might be the game that we see Kyle Pitts, if anything, outproduce an Odell Beckham that has historically so far on the season done anything far from impress.
Whew. Quick question: is Olamide Zaccheaus? What? How'd you pronounce that?
I think they pronounce it Olamide.
Do they say it? Is it really Olamide?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Really interesting. Okay. Anyway, both very good arguments. Nate, I appreciated the effort there.
Thanks.
But Patterson has been on the field every week except for 1 week in the past 7 weeks, and Kyle Pitts hasn't cleared 10 points once since the Dolphins game. I just cannot pick a guy that is clearly the focus of every single defense.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna roll the safeties up. I think one of the reasons that Patterson has been successful is Kyle Pitts, and this isn't going to be a vice versa situation. People will let Patterson beat them and shut down Kyle Pitts if they have to. And Brian, you're right. OBJ is going to get opportunity if he's on that field. He is still a good player. I say this as a Browns fan. He is a good player. He can run routes. He gets open like crazy. It was not his fault that Baker Mayfield didn't know how to hit him. And Matt Stafford can. Regardless of him playing hurt, hopefully he's getting healthy. I don't like that there's a back issue with Stafford, but I'm still going to take a beaten down Stafford over Matt Ryan right now. I'm gonna go with Brian and Odell.
Yeah, and that was one of the challenges is you try to hope. You're like, all right, here's a good thing. Here's Kyle Pitts. What's he been lacking? Touchdowns. No red zone targets. He's not being looked at. Maybe Tampa's bad in red zone. Nope. They actually, they allow enough touchdowns, but it's, like 12th most in football against the tight end. So it's not even enough to really sway that, but it was a great argument. I think that collectively, if there's anything we've learned is that this kind of fits our Sunday segment. A lot of ugly kind of options that hopefully we all have better than we have to choose from when it comes down to this.
I can't wait for the Sunday questions. Should I start Chuba Hubbard or Kenny Nwangu?
Oh,
exactly. It will. It'll be Amir Abdullah versus Kenny
Rex
Nwangu.
Burkhead. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, speaking of that, on Sunday, tune in at 9 p.m. Central, 10 Eastern. What is that? 7 Western time, and listen to the 4-Eyed pregame show. Are you guys both going to be there?
I should be. Yeah.
Tyler, are you able to make it?
I believe so.
Awesome. Well, then that will wrap up this episode of Fourth and Frames. Jorge is not with us because he was up till 2 a.m. with his new puppy Penny. Hopefully Penny gets some sleep so you can get some sleep as well and join us on Sunday. So, and Doug, thanks for joining.
Hey.
Sorry for the late hello. My apologies. But Brian, Tyler, great show, and I will see you guys on Sunday.
Have a good one.